Welcome back to the lounge. I'm going to show you how to change the alternator on a 1995 Chevy with a 10mm wrench, a 13mm wrench, a 14mm wrench, a 15mm wrench, and a 16mm wrench. No screwdrivers, no nothing else. My truck is a little bit modified. I do not have standard size battery bolts. I have changed them out for, hold on, 3/8 coarse thread SAE bolts. So the 14mm it is. It fits well enough. Always disconnect the negative side of the battery first. And some people wonder why. Well, let me tell you why. If you disconnect the positive side of the battery and you're spinning your wrench and you're hooked up to the positive lug and you touch the body, then you weld the wrench to the truck. That's why we always unhook the negative side. We've got the battery unhooked now. We're gonna come around here. We're gonna peel back this little guy right here. There is our main lug for power. We're gonna go ahead and break that one loose with the 10mm. And spin that bad boy off of there. You got a remanufactured alternator here, and it's giving us some fits. It's overcharging and undercharging, and sometimes when they spike and overcharge, they'll burn components up and make all kinds of mess. 10mm bolt on the back side of the alternator here. We're gonna go ahead and break that one loose. Wait, before we get too carried away, we need to remove our accessory belt. So, on the accessory belt, there's all kinds of different ways to do this. This is how I'm gonna like to do it. Should be the 16mm. I'm going to double up my wrenches. This is the dangerous way to do it. If you're not well versed in this method, please do not stack wrenches like this. Loosen the belt. Take the belt off. I'm going to be very careful not to move the belt around a bunch. Try to keep it on the other pulleys in their grooves so that I don't have to reroute the belt. We can take our wrenches off now. Come back around to the back side here. We're going to take this bolt out on the back side. Zip, zip. There's another 10mm bolt on this particular model in the front. Take this bolt out. Hey, wind, nobody asked you. Okay, and that back bolt is either a 15mm or a 14mm. Most typically it's a 15mm. Take that bolt out. Alternator out. This is a little trick most people do not know about. Any hammer will do. This sleeve right here is designed to clamp down on the alternator. Sometimes they're a little bit of a snug fit. You take a hammer, very carefully, tap it back. What that'll do is that'll allow your alternator to slide in a little bit easier because it's not going to be a tight fit in there. That one's snug enough even with us moving that back. I'm going to take our main bolt, which is the largest one with the 15mm head. We're going to get it started in. This is where some people make a mistake. They start, they tighten that thing up, and then they can't get the rest of the bolts in. Little pro tip. Start all the bolts before you tighten any of the bolts. We make sure everything is started and threading in correctly and not cross-threading. And no ratchets, no power tools, just a few wrenches. If your vehicle is standard and it's a GM like this one, your battery bolts are going to be 5/16 or 8mm. Most people have an 8mm in their box. Use the boxed end, the one that's a full circle, not the open end of the wrench, because you will less likely round the head of the bolt off trying to remove it. It's faster with ratchet, it's faster with power tools, but you can still do it just like this without any fancy tools. You can get tools just like this at just about any auto parts store. You can get them at the local supermarket, not supermarket, Malwart. You can get them at the Bar Freight and just about anywhere else. It's easy to come up with these tools. A little bit of elbow grease. You can do the job yourself. Shop would probably charge a customer about $100 labor plus parts to do this job. You can go to your local used auto parts store. Sometimes you can find a good alternator there. You take a risk, but if you find a good alternator, you're going to spend somewhere around $30 to $40 for a used alternator that's probably still good. Put it in your truck. You might get 30 or 40,000 miles out of that used alternator, but that ain't bad. That one front there is a long-winded guy, but I'm gonna get it. Come on, baby. Make sure you tighten your bolts nice and snug, but not so tight that you round them off or strip them out. Another little trick, once you got everything snug down, that spot where that sleeve is, give it a tap. That'll relax it. There's no tension on it now, so it's a lot less likely to break under tension. Take our 16 millimeter, put it back on the tensioner. Before you do anything, very carefully and slowly, grab your belt, get it on the pulleys, give it a little bit of tension, start pulling it toward the alternator. This is the tricky part, boys and girls. Don't get your finger under the belt. That tensioner has a lot of spring pressure, and if it grabs your finger, it'll hurt a little bit. Now, put our main lug back on, like so. 10 millimeter wrench, snugs that bad boy down. Put the rubber protector boot back on, plug the alternator back in, go over to our battery. Again, my battery does not have the stock bolt with a 8 millimeter head. I have changed out and put 3/8 SAE coarse thread bolts in my battery. I do that out of preference. You do not have to do the same. And voila, back to the truck. Turn the key on. We're sitting at about 11.5, 12 volts. Start it up. Comes up there, it's just above 14 volts. That's about normal. My alternator was charging at 14 volts, but sometimes it would drop down to 12 volts. Sometimes it would spike up to 16 volts. Sometimes that regulator will get stuck and it'll full charge as much as the alternator can put out. When it does that, it'll fry your stereo, it'll fry your computer. It can even cause the dreaded F word under the hood of your car. Thanks for watching.